Redditors, who are not in love with their SOs, why are you still with them? Loved her dog. We have a special needs daughter, who doesn't talk, until she's able to tell me that something happened and she can understand more complex ideas and situations. There's no way I'm putting her in someone else's hands. My husband and I just don't mesh. He doesn't like me and I don't like him. For the most part we can get along and even have fun doing things together with our daughter, but we haven't been intimate in years. We're both in our late 30s, and we reasonably don't have family to help. Although once she starts going to school full-time, I believe I will have more options to do something financially productive with my time. I'm no longer with them, but was with her for 8 years. I never loved her but stayed because of a combination of self-loathing and she relied on me for everything, so I was afraid of what would happen if I left. Also financially I couldn't live on my own, but I bit the bullet anyway because I can figure out the rest, and staying with her was only stunting her ability to learn how to be an adult. I was afraid he'd kill himself because he was so depressed, so I waited till he was a bit better mentally. The second was more of a roller coaster. I waited 5 months before breaking up because so many things came up. I didn't want him to think I was obsessed with the number 3, so I couldn't break up after 3 months. Then it was summer break, so I couldn't see him and I wanted to do it in person. Then his birthday, then Christmas. I finally broke up in Jan, and then get back in April because I genuinely fell for him again. We lasted 3 years before I realized I was the only one putting any effort into staying in the relationship and finally broke it off for good. We lasted 3 years before I realized I was the only one putting any effort into staying in the relationship and finally broke it off for good. Was that the real reason, or was it because of your obsession with the number 3? I've honestly never realized that, but dang nabbit, he was right all along. I'm thankfully not in this relationship anymore, but out of fear that he'd do something to hurt himself. He threatened to do it when I first brought up that I wasn't happy in the relationship, and he became incredibly manipulative. I was the one super in love. I don't think he was. Once every 4 or 5 months, we'd have some sort of discussion. The last time, it was that he didn't know if what we had was love. I should have seen that as a warning, but I convinced him to stay with me after an hour discussion. I think he felt guilty. I stayed with him through suicide attempts, drug-induced psychosis, and moved countries for him. I imagine he felt an incredible amount of guilt, and stayed with me because of that. I think he cared for my well-being maybe, but he wasn't in love, and it's painfully obvious now that I'm out of the relationship. Being in love seems like a state over which you have no control. I long ago made the decision just to love the woman who became my wife. Fortunately she made the same decision about me. Romantic infatuation has faded, but our love for each other endures. It takes work to maintain, to avoid taking each other for granted. Love is not an emotion, it is a practice. I was in a pretty bad relationship when I was younger. I stayed because I thought nobody else would love me. He was incredibly abusive and would remind all the time that if I left nobody would ever care about me or love me like he does. I was just so terrified to leave. What if he was right? It's been almost 10 years since that relationship and I'm happy to report that he was wrong. Although it's taken a lot of work to realize that, and I still have fleeting moments of doubt. I'm in a relationship for the last 14 years and what I have to say is, love is amorphous. It changes what it is and is hard to pinpoint sometimes. Sometimes you will be mad at each other. Sometimes you will share laughter and smiles and hugs and kisses. Sometimes you will be underwhelmed. Sometimes you will be bored. Sometimes you will be full of pride and appreciation. Other times you will take them for granted. Sometimes the sex will be great. Other times samey. But life goes on. Can anyone truly say they are in love constantly and without interruption always? Or is it something that ebbs and flows? I think the latter. But I am always loyal and feel allegiance to my partner and family. I always have the attitude that I am committed and we are on this journey together. And I certainly don't want to be with anyone else. So that's my 2 cents right now. From my sill, if I leave I'm the perpetrator, breaking up a marriage, wrecking a home, etc., and hurting and humiliating my kids, my parents, my in-laws, but if I stay I'm a victim of my miserable husband, and everyone wants to help victims. My parents did not love each other but have stayed together because of children. She had me convinced everything was either normal or my fault. Then she cheated and is playing the victim because I read some of her messages after I found out she lied. Now it takes a year to divorce where I live, so technically still married for a year. Anyone reading this for personal reasons, just get out. My brother can't stand his wife. Hasn't really been in love with her since about a year before their wedding. He talks about divorce to me when we're alone, but he'll never do it. He thinks he'll never meet anyone else, being 32 with no social life. Plus there's a strong possibility she might kill herself if they broke up, or at least attempt it, so together they'll stay. I just hope they don't bring kids into it. He has so much life ahead of him, and no kids. He needs to get out of there, and his wife needs therapy. It just sort of became a habit. And when I realized I didn't have the feelings anymore, we had 2 young children and I didn't want to break up the family. And later when we tried couples therapy, this didn't change anything. But our son was diagnosed with leukemia 2 years ago, so I felt we had to stay together until he was well. My ex didn't agree and we were divorced this summer. My son is almost through the treatment and is doing fine. I have not been this happy and relaxed in years. And so far the kids 6 and 9 years old have coped well with me moving and when they're staying at my new place. I realized recently that every relationship I've been in, until the current one, had absolutely no love in it. I told myself I loved them, but I was really with every one of them for convenience or because they asked me out and I was scared to say no. The last 2 ended so horribly. I was scared to leave the house for a long time, and routinely asked guys at my job to walk me to my car because I heard one of them was looking for me. Met my current sir online, moved 800 miles away to be with him. It'll be 2 years in January and we just had a baby girl together. It just took a literal ton of pain to get to the happy spot. My boss has been vocal about wanting to leave, but he has kids and no prenup, so he can't afford it. My cousin told me about 3 hours after he got married that he didn't want to get married, but now he was terrified he would lose his house and basically all his money, alimony plus child support, if they got divorced. I told him that he should have said something 3+ hours ago and he said he couldn't. I then asked him, if this was such a big concern to him, why he didn't get a prenup. His exact words to me were, those don't actually exist. They're just made up for movies. They've been married just over 2 years now and I'm pretty sure it's only going to end if she leaves him or one of them dies. Considering he's 26 and she's 23 or 24, it sounds like he's in for a long, miserable life. Your cousin is an idiot. When I was in a relationship with my ex, I liked her, cared for her, been there for her when she needed and gave space if she needed. I don't know if this is love, but she did none in return. She just said yes and that's it. She was only physically attracted to me, I guess. I don't think she ever loved me. She broke up with me for nothing. One day she wanted me out of her life, so I left. I was with my first boyfriend for almost 11 years. I don't know when exactly it was I began to fall out of love with him, but I know it was at least a year or so before I finally left. I grew up and changed and he didn't. One day I realized I felt more like his mother than his partner, and that was the beginning of the end. This article perfectly explains everything I felt. I stayed for a lot of reasons. Fear he would hurt himself if I left. Financial obligations, we own a house together. Still trying to sort that out. We had 2 cats I thought would be crushed if I left. I had no family of my own and his family was basically all I had. Guilt and shame, thinking I just wasn't trying hard enough. Thinking I owed him. And convenience. I had a big bad case of sunk cost fallacy going on. I thought if I just kept hanging on, kept putting in more effort, the spark would come back. But it never did. I'm ashamed of it. But eventually the feelings of frustration and discontent turned into resentment and contempt, and I wasn't as kind to him as I should have been. I resolved so many times to put those negative feelings aside and choose to love him, but they always crept back in. I thought staying without love but with security and stability would be better than leaving with nothing at all. But I was wrong about that. I was more miserable than I even was aware, and after I left I felt so unbelievably free and light and like myself again. I'm sorry for both of us that I didn't leave sooner, because I don't think either of us was truly happy. Till the best way to stay in a long-term relationship is to be suicidal. Neither of us experience attraction, but we still care deeply for each other. He's my best friend. Also, the marriage was mutually beneficial. My soon-to-be ex-husband and I had been together for almost 8 years when we both decided to get a divorce. Had been high school sweethearts. But we both were going in different directions in our life and it was time to move on. I knew right after we got married, I was only 20 at the time, that I think I was more in the idea of being married and in love than actually being in love and happy. My sister is a massive piece of shit. Constantly calls her husband limpy in front of people, in reference to his supposed limp dick. Tells him that she wishes he'd get in a car and drive off a cliff. I'm not saying she does this just when they're arguing. I mean she does this literally every single day. Not even angry at him. He's been dealing with this bullshit for 20+ years out of the 30 years they've been together. The reason he does not leave here is that she would be homeless if he did. She has a bunch of felonies for theft, identity theft, prescription forgeries, etc. She used to be a nurse. Had a decent career. Now she wouldn't be able to get a job anywhere. He knows that if he were to leave her, there's a decent chance she'd die on the streets. Other than him, everyone has abandoned her at this point. Just a side note, he is an incredibly honest person, never steals, does not do drugs, goes to work every single day and works hard. Jesus. Let her be homeless. Throwaway. I honestly don't know, because it's been more than 25 years and it's just easier to live as roommates than to go my own way. Even though in a lot of ways that would be easier. Additionally, she would be royally in so many ways. No real income, no place to really go, she wouldn't be able to afford a nice place. I'd be perfectly fine, but she'd be in a world of hurt. I don't necessarily love her, but I don't hate her enough to do that to her. So I stay. In my first relationship I thought I had scored the jackpot. I was young and he was young and jacked and smart. He overglorified himself and I just couldn't see that. I looked up to him as a god, mainly because he kept saying I was bad at my studies and cooking and basically everything that I loved to do. I thought I would never get someone better, so thus I stayed. I thought I loved him. I thought that was what love was. But I was just proud that I had gotten someone so amazing. I was stupid. Me. This is the most depressing thread I've ever seen on Reddit. I've had 2 or 3 serious girlfriends in 15 years of adulthood, so I know the shitty feeling of feeling alone. I would rather be alone than half of these relationships. As others have said, it is impossible to love someone the same way every day, so it is normal that on some days everything is fine and on other days you are not sure how you feel. You don't know what love is anymore. You feel confused and suffocated. But what really matters is knowing that you are unable to be disloyal or purposely hurt the person you have chosen to be your partner, and you know you can count with them when you are well and when you're not. And when you think about the relationship, you know you don't want to be with anyone else. I think that idea we have that love should be all romantic and roses is very wrong. Life is not like that. A relation is hard work. In the end of the day, what matters is be there for each other. I love, but I'm not in love with my girlfriend anymore. We moved in together too soon. I knew better and did it anyway. We are completely incompatible living together. I'm angry every day at tons of stuff. But I'm not gonna throw her out cause I do care, so I'm helping her save to get her own place, and we are playing couple in the interim, but I am so ready to live alone and be single again. I am currently in an amazing relationship. Textbook true love type of stuff. However, years back I was in a relationship with a woman who abused me physically, sexually and otherwise. And I did not love her. Not for the last year or so when the abuse got bad. So why did I stay if it was so bad? Well, unfortunately, and this is true for abusive relationship as well as for mundane loveless relationships, people get wound up together and then it becomes very difficult to imagine your life without them, even if it's not a good life. I guess people are better at surviving the current hardship than breaking away into the unknown. There's a lot more to my story, and everyone's story has its own details. But I think that's the basic answer. You build a life with someone. It gets hard to throw that life away.